We love the idea that the world is a perfect meritocracy, that the most talented rise to the top, the hardest workers get rewarded, and the smartest minds shape the future. But what if I told you that success isn't just about intelligence, talent, or even hard work? Success is a game, and like any game, some players start with better pieces, a head start, or rules bent quietly in their favor. In Outliers, Malcolm Gladwell doesn't just challenge what we think we know about success, he dismantles it. It's shocking because it reveals something we rarely want to admit. The greatest success stories aren't just about personal greatness. They're about hidden advantages, lucky breaks, and invisible forces shaping our lives before we even take our first steps. Think about it. Why were so many tech billionaires born in the mid-1950s? Why do professional hockey players have birthdays clustered in just a few months of the year? Why did the Beatles, of all the thousands of bands in the 1960s, become the biggest of all time? These aren't coincidences, they're patterns, and once you see them, you can't unsee them. Because if success isn't purely about talent, then that means most of what we believe about making it is deeply flawed. And if that's true, then what else have we been getting wrong? There's a reason legends aren't born overnight. Behind every extraordinary talent, behind every jaw-dropping success story, lies an unspoken truth. Mastery is not a gift, it's a grind. We love to believe in the myth of the prodigy, the child genius who picks up a violin and effortlessly composes symphonies, the gifted athlete who dominates the game from day one, the business mogul who was always destined for greatness. But that's not how mastery works. Malcolm Gladwell, in Outliers, introduces a simple yet unsettling idea, the 10,000-hour rule, the notion that to truly excel at anything, you need 10,000 hours of focused, deliberate practice. Not luck, not raw talent, just time, effort, and repetition. But here's what makes it truly mind-blowing. This rule shows up everywhere. Before the Beatles became, well, the Beatles, they were just another struggling band playing dive bars in England. But in 1960, they got an unusual opportunity. They were invited to perform in Hamburg, Germany. It sounded exciting until they got there. They weren't playing glamorous concerts. They were grinding it out in grungy, smoke-filled nightclubs, performing for drunk, half-interested crowds, night after night. They played for 8 hours a day, 7 days a week, far more than their competition back home. By the time they returned to England, they had performed 1,200 times, more than most bands do in a lifetime. That relentless, grueling practice transformed them. Their timing was sharper, their improvisation was effortless, and their synergy was unparalleled. When they finally got their big break, they weren't just good, they were unstoppable. Not overnight success. 10,000 hours. Now let's talk about Bill Gates. We know him as the billionaire genius who co-founded Microsoft, but what's often overlooked is the sheer amount of time he spent coding before anyone even knew his name. When Gates was in 8th grade, something remarkable happened. His private school, Lakeside, got access to a time-sharing computer terminal in 1968. That was unheard of. This was before the personal computer revolution, before even most universities had computers. Gates was obsessed. He spent every waking moment programming, sometimes sneaking out at night to get extra hours of coding in. By the time he dropped out of Harvard to start Microsoft, he had accumulated well over 10,000 hours of hands-on experience. And here's the key. He wasn't necessarily smarter than other aspiring programmers. He just had an insane head start. While other kids were barely touching computers in college, Gates had already mastered the game. Tiger Woods, Mozart, and the relentless pursuit of mastery. This pattern repeats itself again and again. Tiger Woods didn't just wake up as the greatest golfer in history. His father put a club in his hands before he could walk. By the time he was 10, he had thousands of hours of practice behind him. Mozart, often cited as a child prodigy, wrote his first piece at 5, but his truly great works didn't come until his early 20s. Why? Because by then, he had crossed the 10,000-hour threshold. Even Kobe Bryant, a player known for his raw talent, was famous for showing up at 4 a.m. to practice while others slept. These people weren't just talented. They were obsessed. They put in the hours long before the world noticed. If success is a formula, then talent is just one variable. But the dominant factor? Time spent practicing. This means you don't need to be a natural genius. You don't need to be born gifted. You need one thing, an unreasonable commitment to practice. But here's the brutal truth. Most people never reach 10,000 hours. They stop when things get hard. They plateau. They quit too soon. So if you've ever wondered why some people soar while others stall, ask yourself, are you treating success like a sprint, or are you willing to put in the marathon? Because if history has taught us anything, it's that the most successful people aren't just the smartest or the luckiest. They're the ones who simply refuse to stop. We like to believe success is all about skill, hard work, and determination. But what if it's not? What if the most important factor isn't what you do, but when you do it? Take a look at the richest tech moguls in history. Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, Paul Allen, Eric Schmidt, Jeff Bezos. Now here's something strange. Most of them were born between 1953 and 1956. Coincidence? Not even close. If you were born in the mid-1950s, you turned 21 right as personal computing exploded. You were young enough to adapt, but old enough to start companies. If you were born too early, you were already working a stable career and had no reason to pivot. If you were born too late, the gold rush was over and the titans had already taken the throne. Gates, Jobs, and their peers weren't just smart. They were born at the exact right moment to capitalize on a technological revolution. Right place, right time, right age. Now let's switch gears. Imagine you want to be a professional hockey player. You train every day, you're disciplined, you're dedicated. But what if I told you your birth month might be the biggest predictor of your success? This isn't speculation, it's statistics. In professional hockey leagues, an overwhelming number of elite players are born in January, February, or March. Why? Because in youth hockey leagues, the cutoff for age groups is January 1st. A kid born on January 2nd is in the same age bracket as someone born December 30th. But that January-born player is almost a full year older, stronger, and more physically developed. At age 5, this gap is enormous. At age 10, it determines who gets extra coaching and ice time. By 15, that small advantage has snowballed into a game-changing lead. Not because one kid worked harder, not because one kid was more talented, just because of their birthday. We hate admitting that luck plays a role in success. It makes us uncomfortable. Because if luck and timing matter, then what does that say about all the stories we tell ourselves about grit, hustle, and self-made success? But look closer, and you'll see this pattern everywhere. Warren Buffett was born in 1930, just in time to take advantage of the post-OU2 economic boom. Google was founded in 1998, right as the internet became mainstream, but before competition exploded. TikTok blew up in 2020, just as the pandemic locked millions inside, desperate for entertainment. These weren't just brilliant people with great ideas. They were brilliant people with great ideas in the right moment in history. So what does this mean for you? It means success isn't just about talent, it's about positioning. Find the right moment to act. Timing matters more than effort alone. Look for emerging opportunities. The next revolution is happening right now. You just have to spot it before everyone else does. If you feel like you're at a disadvantage, look for leverage. If you missed one wave, catch the next one. The world never stops changing. Opportunities are always shifting. Because the biggest lie about success is that it's entirely in your control. The truth? You don't just need hard work, you need a wave. The question is, are you ready to ride it when it comes? We like to think we're independent, that our choices, our actions, and our success belong to us alone. But what if that's not true? What if, without realizing it, we are products of forces far older than us, deep cultural patterns shaping how we think, how we work, and even how we define success? Because history doesn't just shape nations, it shapes people. The Asian math advantage. Imagine two students, one from the United States, the other from China, sitting down to solve a math problem. Who finishes first? Odds are, the Chinese student. Not because they're naturally better at math, not because they have some genetic advantage, but because of something that happened thousands of years ago. In Western societies, farming was dominated by wheat. You plant it, you wait, you harvest. There's no day-to-day struggle, just seasons of work followed by months of waiting. But in Asia, rice farming was different. Rice required constant attention, daily care. The difference between a successful harvest and total failure wasn't luck. It was how hard you worked, how precise you were, how much effort you poured into every single day. For centuries, success in Asian cultures was defined by relentless effort. And that attitude didn't disappear. It passed down through generations, through families, through entire education systems. So when you see students from China, Korea, or Japan spending more hours studying, working harder at problem solving, and excelling in math, you're not seeing some natural genius. You're seeing 1,000 years of cultural inheritance. But it goes even deeper. Did you know that the Chinese numbering system makes math easier to understand? In English, numbers are irregular: 11, 12, 13. There's no obvious pattern. But in Chinese, the numbers are structured logically. 11 is 10-1, 12 is 10-2, 36 is 3-10-6. This makes basic arithmetic faster and more intuitive. Chinese-speaking children learn to count sooner than English-speaking children, simply because their language makes it easier. So while one student struggles with memorizing irregular numbers, another student is already doing calculations. Culture doesn't just shape how hard you work, it shapes how you think. But here's where it gets dark. Culture isn't always an advantage. Sometimes it's a trap. Look at airline crashes. Decades ago, investigators found something disturbing. Some airlines had far more crashes than others. But it wasn't because of bad pilots. It wasn't because of worse planes. It was because of culture. In many countries, hierarchy is deeply respected. Subordinates don't challenge authority. They don't question their superiors, even when something is clearly wrong. Now imagine that mentality in a cockpit. A co-pilot notices something dangerous, a mistake, bad weather, engine failure. But instead of shouting, instead of warning the captain directly, he hesitates. He uses vague language. He hints instead of commands. And in those critical moments, silence leads to disaster. It's called Power Distance Index, PDI, how much a culture respects hierarchy. In cultures with low PDI, people speak up. They challenge authority. They question orders. In cultures with high PDI, authority is rarely questioned, even when lives are at stake. And the numbers don't lie. Some of the worst aviation records come from high PDI countries, not because the pilots were bad, but because co-pilots were too afraid to correct them. When airlines started training crews to override their cultural instincts, to speak up, to question, to challenge, accident rates plummeted, because sometimes culture is the difference between life and death. Culture isn't just history. It's not just tradition. It's the silent hand shaping your life. It influences how you work, how you think, how you interact, and what you believe is possible. If you were raised in a culture that values grit and hard work, you may find success easier, but burnout more common. If you were raised in a culture that discourages questioning authority, you might struggle to challenge the status quo, even when it's necessary. If you were raised in a culture that rewards creativity over discipline, you might innovate faster, but lack structure. So the real question isn't if culture is shaping you, it's whether you recognize it and whether you can break free from its limits. Because the most successful people don't just inherit their culture. Why do the rich get richer? Why do the best keep winning? Why do some people seem to get every opportunity while others struggle just to stay in the game? It's not a coincidence. It's not just hard work. It's something Malcolm Gladwell calls the Matthew effect. A principle so powerful, it decides who succeeds before the game even begins. For to everyone who has, more will be given. The Matthew effect is named after a passage in the Bible. For to everyone who has, more will be given, and he will have an abundance. But from the one who has not, even what he has will be taken away. Matthew 25:29. In simple terms, advantage multiplies itself. Disadvantage does too. The strong get stronger, the weak fall further behind. It happens in money, it happens in education, it happens in sports, and it's happening all around you right now. Let's talk about Canadian hockey. If you walk into a professional hockey team's locker room and check every player's birth date, you'll notice something bizarre. Most of them were born in January, February, or March. Why? Are winter-born kids naturally better at hockey? Do they train harder? Are they more passionate? No, they're just lucky. The cutoff date for youth hockey leagues in Canada is January 1st. That means a kid born on January 2nd is competing against kids born in December of the same year, who are almost a full year younger. At age 5, that difference is huge. The January-born kid is bigger, stronger, faster. So he gets picked for the elite teams. He gets more coaching, more practice, more opportunities. By the time he's 10, he's not just slightly better, he's miles ahead. The December-born kid, he got left behind before he even had a chance. And this same pattern repeats in every field. Small advantages compound over time. The kid who gets better teachers early on will outperform the kid who struggles alone. The musician who gets one great mentor will rise above the one who never gets feedback. The startup founder who already has a wealthy network will raise capital 10 times faster than someone with no connections. These aren't differences in talent. They're differences in starting position. One person gets momentum, the other gets stuck. And here's the painful truth. Success is less about where you finish and more about where you start. Think about Ivy League colleges, Harvard, Yale, Stanford. Are they full of the smartest students? Or are they full of students who had every possible advantage growing up? Yes, Ivy League students are intelligent, but they're also more likely to have wealthy parents, more likely to have private tutors, more likely to have elite extracurriculars, study abroad experiences, and perfect SAT prep. These students weren't better than their peers. They were selected for success long before they ever applied. And just as advantage snowballs, so does disadvantage. The student who falls behind in elementary school never catches up. The kid who grows up in a low-income neighborhood doesn't get the same tutoring, the same resources, the same head start. The entrepreneur without connections doesn't get the same funding, the same introductions, the same doors opened for them. The cycle repeats. Success builds on success, struggle builds on struggle. And by the time people reach adulthood, the game is already rigged. So what can you do about it? The Matthew effect is brutal, but it's not invincible. Here's how you fight back. If you have an advantage, use it and multiply it. If you've been given opportunities, leverage them. Don't waste momentum. If you're behind, look for ways to accelerate. Small changes make big differences. A better mentor, a better learning strategy, a better network. These things stack up over time. If the system is unfair, find a way around it. Most people accept the rules. The smartest people rewrite them. Because in the end, the world isn't fair. Some people start with a lead. But the greatest success stories, they're the ones who figure out how to catch up and pass everyone else. We worship intelligence. We admire the child prodigy, the genius scientist, the 180 IQ mastermind who can solve impossible problems in their sleep. We assume that the smartest people always win, that IQ is the golden ticket to success. But here's the shocking truth. Intelligence alone is never enough. Because in the real world, practical skills beat raw intelligence every single time. The smartest man you've never heard of, Chris Langan, arguably the smartest man alive. His IQ, 195. Higher than Einstein. Higher than any Nobel Prize winner. He could speak in full sentences at 6 months old. He taught himself advanced physics and philosophy without ever setting foot in a university lecture hall. By all logic, he should have been a world-changing genius, a billionaire, a legend. But instead, Chris Langan spent most of his life working as a bouncer in a bar. Not because he wasn't smart enough, but because intelligence without practical skills is useless. Langan was brilliant, but he didn't know how to navigate people, systems, or opportunity. He didn't know how to negotiate, how to network, how to move through institutions that demand something more than just brain power. And so, despite his genius, he never made an impact. The Harvard kid who wasn't the smartest in the room now, compare that to someone like Robert Oppenheimer, the father of the atomic bomb. Was Oppenheimer the smartest physicist of his time? Maybe, maybe not. But here's what made him different. He knew how to persuade people. He knew how to sell his ideas. He knew how to maneuver through powerful institutions and gain influence. At one point, Oppenheimer almost got kicked out of Cambridge for poisoning his tutor. A regular student, expelled, career over. But Oppenheimer, he talked his way out of it. Because Oppenheimer didn't just have intelligence, he had practical intelligence, the ability to read situations, influence people, and navigate systems. And that made all the difference. Why street smarts matter more than book smarts. There are two kinds of intelligence. Analytical intelligence, the kind measured by IQ tests, logic, problem-solving, mathematical ability. Practical intelligence, the ability to read people, adapt, communicate, and navigate real-world challenges. Schools only teach analytical intelligence. They reward students who memorize facts, solve equations, and get good test scores. But the highest paid, most successful people, they aren't just book smart, they're socially and strategically intelligent. Look at Fortune 500 CEOs. Are they the most brilliant minds in business? No, in fact, some of the smartest people in the world never make it to the top. Because business isn't a test you can ace with high IQ alone. It's a social game. It's knowing how to build relationships. It's knowing when to speak and when to stay silent. It's knowing how to sell ideas, inspire teams, and negotiate power. And none of that is taught in school. So what does this mean for you? If you want to succeed, stop relying on intelligence alone. If you're smart, build practical skills. Intelligence is only valuable if you know how to use it. Learn persuasion, negotiation, and adaptability. The people who get ahead aren't the ones with the best ideas. They're the ones who know how to make people listen. Stop thinking knowledge alone will save you. It won't. Wisdom is knowing what to do with what you know. Because in the real world, being the smartest person in the room means nothing if you don't know how to play the game.